Well, hello, welcome to LIFICAST. My name is Johnny A. Anson. This is the official podcast of the Leeds International Festival of Ideas. In each episode, we're going to explore one of the big topics of the festival, and today we ask, are we more lonely? In a world more connected than ever, loneliness is reaching epidemic proportions. 45% of adults in the UK experience loneliness, and contrary to popular belief, it's not exclusive to older people. 16 to 24-year-olds are now the most likely to feel lonely. So do we feel more lonely than we ever did, and why do we feel so lonely? Here to at least try and answer the question is Georgia Whedon. We have Dr. James Jackson and Shannon Humphrey with us today. So nice to have you here, thank you.
Nice to be here.
Let's just go around the table and give a brief introduction to each other if we can. Georgia, we'll start with yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Georgia Whedon and I'm the founder and CEO of umii, and umii is basically a digital solution to isolation and loneliness. And the reason why I'm here is because I experienced loneliness and isolation at university myself. So I went to the University of Leeds, and yeah, I really thought this is a massive problem. We've done a lot of research into it, and that's why we've created umii. So that's why I'm here.
Great stuff, welcome.
Hi, I'm Shannon Humphrey and my business is Pathwaysforpoisitivity. I'm a first aid for mental health instructor and I work predominantly with schools and within education, and I found that loneliness aligns quite strongly with mental health, and as you said, it's quite often young people that experience loneliness and it's not something that they're comfortable talking about yet, and I think it's possibly one of the final taboos and stigmas around mental health is loneliness.
Hello Johnny, my name is Dr. James Jackson. I am a reader in psychology at Leeds Trinity University. My research interest, if anything, is chronic stress. And while there are a few different variations on that, I'm interested in how people cope, if people are resilient towards it or not, and loneliness is unfortunately a perfect example of that sort of thing.
So let's get into loneliness. By the way, you might be wondering what our little bingo machine is in the middle. It's the official, very expensive, no expense spent Leeds International Festival of Ideas random question generator.
Cool.
We'll go through that in a moment's time. Firstly, I guess if we're talking about loneliness, we need to work out what it is. So if we start with yourself, Dr. Jackson, what is loneliness?
Well, I would be comfortable with defining, well, first of all, social isolation. The idea is when somebody is out there and they do not feel that they have the quality or the quantity of interaction that they want. Some people, and we can talk about that later I'm sure, don't like interacting with other people and enjoy being socially isolated, and they're people who enjoy solitude, peace and quiet, night shift, lighthouse keeper, that sort of thing. But if you don't want to be socially isolated and you feel that you don't have enough of an interaction, that leads into loneliness. So loneliness is the negative side of being isolated.
And I'm guessing, Georgia, for you, at university, particularly in your first year, you're surrounded by people. You're never alone, but it doesn't mean that you have a connection with somebody.
No, definitely not. Like, I think there's around like 35,000 students at the University of Leeds, so like I really wasn't on my own. But I think, like you're saying, like you don't have to be alone to feel lonely. It's like I think I went to university with really like high expectation. I think a lot of students do, like you were saying, students between 16 to 24, they're surrounded by social media and people like putting their lives on social media, and you think, oh, that's how university should be, and I should be with loads of friends, there should be loads of people, and I think that's what I went to university with. And when I went there and I didn't have the connections that felt meaningful to me, and I weren't meeting the people who were exactly like me, that's when I panicked and felt like I wasn't making friends, and yeah, I think my confidence dropped a lot then, and I wasn't able to like go out and join social critical activities and things like that. So yeah, that was what happened to me.
That is by no means an exclusive experience to Georgia, is it, Shannon? I'm guessing, particularly with the young people that you work with, there's a lot out there that say something similar.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, that people live their life through being online. So they see big groups of people, because as you know, you want to put your show reel on social media. You show the best parts of your life and the best sides of your personality. And when you're having the most fun and the most enjoyment and with all of your friends, and then when you're sitting at home by yourself and you're looking at all these people having this wonderful time, and then you put the lid down and you look around and there's nobody around you, you're like, oh, there must be something wrong with me. And I think there's that feeling of maybe I'm a bit of a Billy No Mates, or nobody likes me, and then you can go down a bit of a rabbit hole of what's wrong with me. And I think that happens a lot with younger people. But I think the good thing about being in school is that you do have classmates. But when you're in that little bit in between, when you've left school and that bit between school and college or uni, that's when your friends kind of go off and do the different, different things, and they have different avenues that they want to explore. And sometimes you lose that connection, which can lead to loneliness.
I want to talk about social media in a moment because that's a long old conversation
It is,
to have. But I also want to explore first about how it affects us. Lots of research out there that shows a lot of frightening things, that loneliness, living alone in poor social connections, with poor social connections, are as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is an astonishing statistic.
It's like linked to heart disease, isn't
Heart
it?
disease, and so loneliness increases the risk of high blood pressure, and loneliness is worse for you than obesity. So it's a terrible thing for us. It's not just about feeling a little disconnected and feeling like, oh, we haven't got a friend to play with today. There are serious ramifications for loneliness.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there are lots of ways in which loneliness can affect our health. I mean, arguably, you could be sat there at home with your life partner of 30 years and you're eating away and they go, have you taken your heart medicine?
Absolutely, yeah.
And if nobody's there to do that, you don't take it. If you live in a flat with 6 or 7 people, chances are, if you smoke, then you're pushed out on a balcony or you're out in the blizzard, smoking away. But if it's just you by yourself, there'll be ashtrays everywhere. So living by yourself or being by yourself promotes bad behaviour right from the start, bad health behaviour. You're out there with graffiti and stuff. But it's literally, I forgot the question.
It's terrible for you. It's very, very bad for you.
Yeah, it is. But it's also one of those things where, as human beings, we crave to actually be in communication with others. The others, when they were talking before about connections, quality of connection, the thing that drives friendship at school and at work is actually, believe it or not, is proximity.
Yeah.
You were best friend at school, your best friend sitting next to you at school, or was it someone sat next to you at school and they became your best friend?
Yeah.
If you think back long enough, that's what you tend to get. So at the moment, with COVID and not having that proximity with people for a long period of time, it breaks the main chain that we have to initiate friendships with others. And although we can talk about it later, if someone is actually lonely, it activates the same areas in the brain that are activated when you feel physical pain.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So, I mean, the example we can actually give about it later, but it is that sense where loneliness is possibly one of the worst things a human being can have. If you like solitude, and like I say, some people find talking to other people immensely irritating. I mean, if you're in a room with me for 20 minutes, as you have been, blood pressure goes up and everything else, and you find that when people don't like the presence of others, then if you imagine having to interact with others for 40 years, the pressure it puts on your heart, the personality types that make up about 50% of the population, fear of being judged by others. And they make up 60% of heart patients because of that constant level of pressure on the heart of having to interact when they don't want to. So for some people, solitude is a blessing.
Yeah.
But for most of it, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's that sense of not having quality conversation is the problem. I think you're talking about social media. If you can't physically talk to someone, maybe talking by social media is the next best thing. I don't personally think it's a replacement.
No.
But if you've been sat at home for a year, what else have you got?
That's it.
Let's talk about social media, but first I want to use our random question generator. Sharon, you can go first. So spin the wheel of our little magic finger machine.
Lex left.
The number correlates to a question I have here. What's the number?
B4.
B4. Oh, perfect. Is social media good or bad for the world? Easy question, you've got 30 seconds.
That's a massive question.
What's your thoughts, Shannon?
well,
Social media, good or bad for the world?
I think I'm going to sit on the fence here.
Of course you are.
Because I think it can be really good for us if you have meaningful connections. So, some people speak to their families at the other side of the world. Where would we have been without FaceTime and Zoom and all those things? So it can be very positive in that way. And as I said earlier, it can be very negative when you're only looking at the very positive side of somebody's life and then you're comparing it to your own, which doesn't match up quite as nicely. So it can be really good for us or it can be really detrimental to us, and it depends on how you use it.
I was reading a research paper from King's College London last night, as I usually like to do just before going to bed. Often my bedtime reading. As part of that survey, they were looking at young people. 96% said that on average they check their phones every 2 minutes of the waking day. And 85% spend 4 to 6 hours a day online, which is a full-time job, effectively.
It's massive.
It's massive.
Yeah.
I went and did, sorry, go on.
You go.
I was going to say that I did an assembly at a local academy for the full year group, and they were about 14 years of age. So I went through and I gave everybody a card and I said, right, by a show of hands, this is pre-COVID, by a show of hands, keep your hands up if you spend this long online. So I said, does anybody spend more than an hour? Obviously all the cards stayed up, but at the academy you are not allowed your phones. Obviously this is like weekends. More than an hour, cards stayed up. 2, 3, 4, most of the cards are still up. 7 hours, so that is longer than most people go to work.
Yeah.
So then I was like, are you constantly on the phone? They were like, yeah. And I was like, well, do you not go like meet your friends and stuff? And they were like, I said, leave your cards up if you go and meet your friends. And they're like, literally a couple of girls that left the cards up. And I said, what do you meet your friends for? And I said, oh, we go and play football and stuff. I said, oh, that's amazing. So I went over to somebody else and I said, why don't you meet your friends in person? And he went, well, it's weird, isn't it? It's weird.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's weird to go meet your mates now, apparently. So yeah.
So
Definitely.
what was your experience like then, Georgia, at university? And I imagine for someone like yourself who was lonely, social media offered a bit of salvation, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, and I'll just go back to like when you were saying how some people don't like to be in solitude and some people do. Like I came from a very close-knit small town. I had a twin sister, identical twin sister, so I was never alone. Like I always needed that connection. And I went to the University of Leeds completely on my own. Like my sister unfortunately didn't get into the University of Leeds. We were both going to go and do sociology together. It might have been a good thing. Obviously we're separate now, so it's really good and we've lived our own lives. But for me, that was like massive. So I was like, really trying to find that close-knit connection that I had with my sister and my friends at home at university, when it can be so difficult to find that. And I think, yeah, obviously social media let me connect with my sister, but it also let me see like all my friends went to Liverpool Uni, Newcastle Uni, and I was seeing how amazing their experience was. And because I wasn't having that experience, to me, like that made me feel so rubbish, and I really didn't know where to turn. There wasn't anywhere on social media that I could go and turn to try and find other people at my university once I'd started. Before I started, I could connect with my flatmates on Facebook and WhatsApp, but unfortunately my flatmates weren't people that I connect with and built really close friendships with, and then I didn't know where else to turn. And as well, I was on a joint honours course, which meant there was only 4 other people on my exact degree. So on my course options were like very limited as well. So I kind of felt like after that there was no other options. So, but yeah, I agree. Social media can be a good thing and a bad thing. I think we can't hide away from it really, because it's always going to be there, isn't it? Let's be honest. And technology's done amazing things for us, isn't it? But like young people, like 16 to 24-year-olds and even older as well, millennials and Gen Z, they do everything online. They order taxis, takeaways, shopping, like that, and that is a bad thing as well. So what I noticed at university is that Gen Z groups are becoming, like face-to-face introductions are becoming less socially acceptable amongst those groups. So like if you think about dating, like in bars, like people don't come up to each other anymore.
It's seen as weird, weird stalkerish, what you come up to me for. People don't welcome it.
Yeah, I love like my mum and dad's stories about like how they met and things like that. Like that is very rare now.
It's really sad, because some of my best memories before getting married, wife, hello by the way, way before getting married, we're going out and having nights out with friends, and then you would see girls in the bar and you would chat and it would be fun and there would be a bit of flirting, you would think, what's going to happen here? And invariably you would bomb and have to go somewhere else. But that excitement of interacting with people and people you didn't know and kind of find out if you could build a connection, I think as well though, then becomes a really important life skill. Because when you do end up going to work, when you do end up being part of a community, you want to be able to build those connections. And if you don't have the life experience, then how do you do it?
100%, yeah.
So tell me about your app, because I think this is probably a good time to bring in Umi.
Yeah.
Because you are trying to find a solution, but you are also having to operate in that space that is causing a problem.
So this is the thing, like this is the reason why we decided to do this. Like I was saying, there's Facebook groups and WhatsApp chats, but there's clear issues with them. Like there's loads of groups. There's often in the group that you get put with, there's over 200 plus people in there, and you have no clue before you go to university. Like it's for the less outgoing students.
Does the university create the WhatsApp group?
So this is what I mean, like sometimes the university create the WhatsApp groups, sometimes they create Facebook groups, but then there's also individual groups that are created by students, so they're created by different groups. You never know which is the right group to be in, and once you're in there, for like the less outgoing student to post a comment on a massive group, it's quite daunting, isn't it, to do that, like for the less outgoing student. So and there's it's open to anybody, so like you can open to promoters, catfishers, like people who are trying to sell you things and things like that. So there's clear issues with those, but also they're not like, let's just say like we can't just say that students can meet face to face. Like we need to do something that's socially acceptable to them. They can meet face to face, but it needs to be something that they're used to and comfortable with. So like we were saying, like when they're ordering taxis and dating and things like that, they're used to doing that on digital. So if we can just offer a socially acceptable way that feels comfortable to them, for them to make those initial introductions, and then they can take those initial introductions into real life and build meaningful friendships. That's what we want them to do, and that's why we're working with our partners to develop and create those connections online, connecting people based on interests, societies and things like that outside of your course and your accommodation, and then encourage them to take that into the real world. So we're working with some of our union partners to do like UMI mixers, or like offers at bars, so you can take your UMI connections into the real world. So that's what we're really trying to do. So they're not just stuck on that phone, and they're not just using it like every day. They're taking those connections into the real world.
Right.
So that's what we're really trying to do.
It reminds me of speed dating, which was kind of a thing 15 years ago, before WhatsApp and whatever. I mean, I remember when I first went to university, this will age me, so it was 99, my uncle and auntie bought me a mobile phone, a big Motorola brick. It took forever to text on it, it cost a fortune, and it just sat on my bedside table for pretty much all of university, because if you wanted to meet people, you would have to do what we were talking about before and have that face-to-face contact, which I do feel like built my personality and ability to do that. And I just wonder from you, Dr. Jackson, if through the course of your career of teaching and being around students, you have noticed a difference in the ability to interact.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely. I mean, I did 2 undergraduate degrees. It's a long story.
You're very clever.
It meant I spent 11 years at university as a student.
That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I've got no lines on my face. I didn't worry about anything. So it meant that when I was going through all that time, I've seen the changes. When I was an undergraduate at Heriot up in Edinburgh doing biology, then that was early 1990s, and nobody had a phone. And it was that point where you had to learn the life skills, in that you arranged to meet someone, you had to go. You had to crawl over broken glass to get there, because, but nowadays I think it's so easy to cancel.
Oh, it is.
So people just think, okay, make it over.
And sometimes it's a relief.
Yeah, and that really frustrates me. When I did my psychology degree at Sheffield, which was late 90s, full Monty time, I was there around about then what you found is that 2 of my flatmates had a phone. And I can remember it was really heaving in the bar. We sent one to the bar and we phoned our orders. And that was what it was for.
It's an early delivery of that, you realise.
It wasn't about meeting at all. But as I've gone through and I've done my PhD and I've been a lecturer for umpteen years now, it's all changed. Even when you have emails with students, they tend to obviously be replying to those emails on their phone. The problem I have, this is just me moaning about it, they think you're texting. And they expect an immediate answer. Which is really, really bad thing, because I would get a texty type email. Sometimes I might get a hello James, you never know, if I want this.
What
are you?
What
you did. And it says at 6 o'clock on a Friday, when I'm not checking my work email, I will often get an email on the Saturday or something going, oh, have you not, maybe my email didn't go through, here it is again. And by the time I get on Monday morning, sometimes I have 2 or 3 or 4 from the same person about the same thing. And it tends to be that immediacy of interaction, the ability to cancel at short notice without leaving you better or can't make it. It's that sort of thing. That's like part of the negative side of it. I mean, I accept it because I met my wife online.
Right.
And I will say I'm up with that, but I'm not on social media, and I think it's a sewer. About Facebook,
it is a bear pit
Twitter
at times,
and all that stuff. So there's always got to be someone doing the other side of it. But the reason for that is, if you are talking to someone, if you are writing something down, particularly with your nicest handwriting, with a nice ballpoint pen,
Look at mine.
it's better than mine. That's why I don't have any notes.
But you're a doctor.
That's why I don't have any notes. I'll never understand any of it. But you will find that people give thought to what they're saying. It's been shown that if you just type stuff into a keyboard, it's not passing a social filter.
Yes,
So
well, Twitter is a prime example of that, isn't it? There are no social filters on there.
So you get that nasty side of it. But having said that, you can get a richness of stuff. I've got a postgraduate student who've been doing some research into parents who homeschool.
Okay.
And they're afraid if you do it right, by asking questions by email, you get people to have like a rich answer because you've got time to think about your reply. So if you cultivate that sense of people thinking before they write, and you've got more of a discussion forum and you're not getting angry and emotional, it can be a very good way of doing it.
When was the last time you sent a letter? In fact, I probably should ask you, have you ever sent a letter, Georgia?
Probably not.
No?
Maybe when I was applying to my first jobs when I was like 14.
Yeah.
I was sending like handwritten letters maybe, but no, like I think that is something that I would love to come back in. Like,
Well, you can. You're in charge. You could send a letter right now.
True. It would be really nice. Yeah, like I love that reading. Like I'd always talk about my mum and dad, but they're like letters to each other when they were younger. Like went to the Imperial War Museum and I loved looking at the letters that they'd wrote to each other. Like it was just so nice.
And you can't imagine in 50 years there being a museum just with printing out emails or text or WhatsApp. It's not the same, is it, Shannon? When was the last time you wrote or sent a letter?
I sent a postcard. If
Okay,
that's
that'll do.
I sent a postcard.
I've sent one over lockdown.
Yeah, I think it's nice to receive a postcard. So that's not too long ago.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's have another random question. Georgia, spin the wheel.
Where's the handle?
There it is.
Okay.
It's very expensive. Don't break it, whatever you do. Oh, you've got to go the other way. Other way. There you go.
Oh, there's two.
You can pick whichever one.
Which one do you want?
I'll just choose that one.
There you go.
If that was a casino, you'd be thrown out.
B3.
Yeah.
B3. The question for B3 is, if you could go back in time and stop smartphones being invented, would you? I mean, that would ruin your business.
Yeah,
so
that's
probably
what I say. I wouldn't be here, would I? I feel like we can't really like have those conversations really because this is where we are, and we have to learn to live with technology and get the benefits out of it. But I think there needs to be more of a focus, and I think this is what I love how you say, like, focus on mental health, because loneliness is a mental health issue. There needs to be more focus on well-being and mental health amongst social media and amongst social media channels like Facebook, and because Facebook started off very similar to what Umi is. It was a place where students could connect. But I think it's completely changed how it is now. Like, it's full of advertising. Like it's an algorithm that's collecting data on you, and it's posting things that are directed at you. Like, it's a very different way of being things. And I think loneliness is a mental health issue, and that's why we make sure that we are offering mental health contacts and links on the app for students to get, because we know that if students are feeling that way, they need easy access to those sort of resources. So I think, what if I went back? No, I wouldn't, obviously. And I think there's ways of managing it. I think we need to teach young students how to manage their time on social media and on tech. Because I've even had struggles myself, really, with how much I'm on it, and I'm only just getting better at that. Like, I put my phone away at 9 o'clock at night, so it's not in bed with me, and it's not even visible for me. It's turned off. Like, we need to be thinking about ways we can manage it ourselves. But yeah, it is an issue, and it can be an addiction.
In terms of loneliness, as we mentioned at the start, nearly half of adults feel occasionally lonely, which equates to 25 million people that feel loneliness. And it's also expensive. It costs the UK £32 billion each year. So there is a reason that we should be challenging and dealing with loneliness, not just because it makes people feel bad. But I wanted to talk about personal experiences, if that's okay, and about when we felt most lonely. And maybe yours was university, Georgia, would you say?
That's the first time
Which is really sad, because I remember, but you know what, I remember going to university and being so excited, and I remember sitting on my bed at Kirkstall Brewery, which was it was like Butlins for 18-year-olds. But being sat in a room and feeling incredibly sad that I didn't have the friends I'd left behind, and I didn't have my family with me. And it really brought home how it was about connections. So that for me was one of the times, ironically, when I felt most lonely, which is like yourself.
Well, I didn't actually experience it and realise I was lonely until I was coming back at Christmas.
Right,
and I think when I'm speaking to students and speaking to universities, that's when a lot of people notice it. I think because you're in the freshers period, like September, October, didn't help that I broke my foot in October, really? But so that was a different story. But in September, October, November, it's a bit of a whirlwind. You get into to like understand how to do university or like the essays and things like that, it's a massive jump from sixth form. But you're meeting so many different people. And when I was, so mine was not very a social, it's not always a sociable accommodation really. It was Oxley, I don't know if you know it, it was really out like
really far away.
Yeah. And that's because I didn't get the one I wanted, which was Central Village, which was really sociable and in the middle. So my flatmates, like I remember saying in the second day, oh, where are we going tonight on Freshers? And they were saying, oh, we'd rather stay and have a cup of tea and watch a film tonight. And I was like, oh.
No, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
So like I panicked a little bit then, but so obviously it was a bit of a whirlwind. Then when I went back at Christmas, I remember feeling, when my dad was like getting ready to take me back, I remember crying the whole way there. Really? So I was like, I don't want to go back. Like I'm not happy there. And then from then on, it was quite unhappy for me for the rest of that year. And I think like you get yourself in a bit of a rut, and when you are alone, you start to overthink. Is it me? Definitely. You have self-doubt, and I think the research shows that there's a massive lack of like social confidence amongst students now. I think they're feeling like it's their fault, or like when they actually get into a relationship with somebody, they think, do they really like me? So I only felt lonely really around Christmas time.
Most of my first year was spent in a haze of snake bite and black, so I didn't really, I wasn't, I mean that's the thing in the 90s, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, I remember.
It's still a thing. Shannon, what about you? When did you feel most lonely?
I split up with a partner of 12 years and we lived together and went our separate ways, and I had to move home with my bags. Hi Mum and Dad, I'm back. So I went home with my bags, and obviously when you're with somebody for such a long amount of time, being separated from them is really difficult, just because you're used to being in the same bed with them, and when you it's a cuddle hormone called oxytocin, so that's released, so it's a physical closeness, like when James said, you end up being best mates with whoever you sit next to at school. So you release those nice happy hormones when you're with them, so even though things may not have been rosy in a relationship, you're still used to that physical closeness and being with somebody and ringing them 10 times a day about nothing in particular. And once that had gone, I was like, oh, I feel very out here, I feel very on my own. And because I'd been together for 12 years, I worked sort of weird shifts. I worked over 7 days, so my friendships had slid a little bit. So then I felt a bit like, well, you can't just go like, hi, I'm back to your friends, because they'll be like, well, we've not really seen anything of you for the past couple of years because you've been with your other half. So I felt really lonely.
That's how you thought, isn't it?
That's
and
how
I think
thought.
They probably didn't feel like that. They probably would have been over the moon to see you again. But like
they were actually really supportive.
You internalised it, don't you? Thinking
started overthinking, and then I realised actually I guess I'm missing him, but am I missing him or am I bored? And I realised that actually sometimes we confuse loneliness for boredom. And if we're really honest with ourselves, it's easy to pick the emotion of loneliness, because if we're bored, we've got to do something about it. If we're lonely, we can feel kind of sorry for ourselves. I'm not saying there's not a reason to be sorry for ourselves, but sometimes we can say, oh, I'm lonely, I don't feel so good. Whereas if I just say I'm bored, then really it's on me to do something. So I started going to the gym, I really got into that. I got out there, started mingling with people, and my life just went on the up and up, and I felt amazing. And I was able to come out of it by switching that thinking from loneliness to boredom, and that really managed to bring me out the other end happily, actually.
Good, congratulations.
That's a really nice story. It's empowering.
It took a while though, this is over the course of probably like, a year to 18 months. It didn't just happen overnight. But some people are perpetually lonely, or maybe perpetually bored.
100%,
and it can last a lifetime if you don't do something about it.
What about you, Dr. Jackson?
Well, it's probably quite an extreme one again, but I know that I mentioned that people listening won't know, but I'm hard of hearing. And I remember I went up to university in Edinburgh after years ago having a bad case of measles, having a slight hearing loss but coping with it, warped some of the bones in my left ear.
Right.
So as long as I sat on the right, or people sat on the right of me, it was fine. I went up to university, and within 2 weeks I couldn't hear my parents on the phone.
Oh, really?
And I had to go to the campus doctor and to give me this really old audiogram with a big machine made out of Bakelite, and told me to get on the bus and go to the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary immediately. And I went there, I was admitted, I had steroid treatment, CAT scans, 5 minutes of oxygen every hour to try to keep the nerve endings alive, and they just died. So I ended up with better hearing aid now, and a great hearing aid now. But in my second week at university, before I'd really had the opportunity to make any friends, I got suddenly swept to a hospital and I had to spend a week or two there.
Scary.
And I was utterly isolated. The only person that came to see me were my parents and my landlord, because no one else knew me.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult. And when I got back into the swing of things, people had started to make friends because my hearing wasn't very good. I couldn't interact very well, and it was a bit of a horror, to be honest with you. One of the reasons I went back to university to do something else was because I wanted the proper experience while being able to hear. And second time round, was much better.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that brings home, though, how loneliness, and totally get what you're saying about sometimes it's about changing the mindset, but how loneliness also needs other people, obviously, to help you deal with it and to help you come out of it. It's okay saying go and join a gym or take yourself off to a bar and make friends. I mean, that doesn't happen, but most people have somebody in their life that can help them somehow, whether it's friends or family or even just a neighbour. Like, we all have a responsibility collectively, don't we, to try and help people that we think might be lonely. But it takes a sense of bravery on ourselves to say, can I help you out? Like, do you want to go out for a drink, or do you want to have a chat?
Yeah.
And I wonder if particularly the next generation of young people who are struggling with that interaction might not be able to help somebody that they know needs helping. I don't know, would your friends do that?
Well, that's what I think, that's why we need to learn. Like, I feel like you never really learn about loneliness until you go and like seek help or things like that. Like, if you are feeling lonely, you go and seek help. Like at university, you go to student services and you speak to them about it. I think we need to be getting, like, it's amazing that people who do courses like yours, like, they're learning things like that, but we can, in the curriculum, we need to get it in there, because one thing that I learned when I left university is, because I came from such a small town, like I say, in close-knit friendship group, I was always like, I need to be with people like me. Like, I need to find people exactly like me, or else I'm never going to have this amazing friendship. But what I've learned, like from reading and things like that and being with different people, is that diversity is amazing. We should celebrate it so much. Like, meeting different people is exciting, and everybody is different. And as soon as you accept that and find the good things about different people, you can make better friendships.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas instead of looking for something that you might never find, that's what I noticed. So I think learning how to develop meaningful friendships really early on is what will help us, I think.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Dr. Jackson, you haven't had a spin of the question generator, have you? I don't want you to miss out on the excitement of this.
Right, this way. Or the other way. I'm making the same mistake.
There you go.
Got one.
There should be an arrow.
There should. I didn't think it'd be that difficult, Georgia, to be honest.
It's B6.
B6. Okay. Well, this might be perfect for your experience with your other half. Do we need to be in the same room as someone to have or make a meaningful connection?
Oh, this is a good one. There is a good one. There is research on this when you actually find, I think about stress levels and the body, how it shows as well. You actually find over a period of time, it often shows itself in high blood pressure. And when you think, I've got high blood pressure, you don't really think a great deal about what that is. But the heart is full of bits whizzing round the body, colliding into the side and causing damage.
Right.
And then it hurtles back into the heart, which has to kind of absorb that. So under high blood pressure, the heart has to become more muscular to cope with the blood coming back in. And since the heart gains its blood supply from outside, it doesn't use the blood going through it. If you have thick muscular wall, the heart dies on the inside.
Because the blood can't get to it.
Lopsided hearts and all this. You actually find if a couple have little marital satisfaction and they don't have that sense of like quality companionship type time, the heart is more likely to become lopsided.
Really?
Yeah, in both sides it's shown about how it's not actually good for you. When if people actually spend time together, then you actually avoid a lot of these heart issues. You do find though, if people spend a lot of time together, then if one's come home stressed, the other catches it. It's like, they did like disease and anxiousness, etc. So people tend to be very much in a rhythm. But you actually find it, take an example as well, if you spend some time at work or say, on downtime, you're probably more in rhythm with your partner, and at work time, you're in rhythm with your work people. There is that kind of adjustment to it. It's more complicated than that. But ultimately, you do actually need to share some time together. I know it sounds crazy, this is probably giving far too much detail about Sal, but my wife really, really liked Henry Cavill.
Right,
It's the only way I was able to get her to watch The Witcher. I decided, just for the sake of it, because we're not really in at the same time, it's a bit Swiss clocky with childcare and all that, so I bought a jigsaw of the richer, with him in the middle and the two ladies to either side, and we spent the weekend doing a bit of that together. And although it sounds really lame, we hadn't really had that opportunity to just spend some time and talk for
Was he shirtless by any chance? Was he shirtless?
No,
Did she just focus on his face and his torso? Finished.
And they are all wearing black clothes,
Right.
so it's going to be the worst jigsaw imaginable. But at the same time, it was just a bit laughing jokey about other things, just because we were there at the same time.
And I can guarantee you remember that moment more than any message you've sent to each other, or more than any inane conversation over WhatsApp, or more than any Netflix box set you've probably watched.
Yeah, I mean, Sal occasionally, I said talk about her, she later.
It's okay,
but she started smoking, then she stopped smoking. When she smoked, she cashed out to the garage, basically. So, texting each other from the garage
really
doesn't really hit the same spot as having a conversation. It just doesn't, So for that reason, then it's contacted better. The other thing, because of lockdown as well, I know I'm talking a lot, I apologise, during lockdown I went absolutely insane and bought a German Shepherd.
Right.
So every night, go to walk her, or she choose her furniture. So I've also been engaging in dog walking.
Yeah.
And I've been wandering around where I live, and other dog walkers, we've all developed this familiar stranger thing. Oh, I wonder where that guy whose name I don't know. As you walk by, it's hello, and the dogs are having a go at each other and all this. And just going around, it's incredibly relaxing.
It's great for combating loneliness as well.
I know, Shannon, when you think about that, it's effectively mindfulness, mindful walking.
Exactly, mindful walking.
While vaguely interacting and watching the world around me without purpose. Going to the shops for a pint of milk is a chore, and I don't like it. But wandering around, basically waiting for my dog to drop her shopping before coming back again, is...
I'm glad you said shopping.
Just in the moment, it's solitude. Really,
but not loneliness.
Not loneliness.
Because
it's just meandering around, and I've actually found that's probably one of the things that kept me sane during lockdown.
Completely
but actually
agree.
Having the companionship of a dog,
Yeah.
alongside
Even
my
walking
wife who's
though as
smoking in the
well.
garage,
Yeah.
and the son and everything. It was on YouTube, so scattered about. But the dog's been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, because it's another connection. You know, lonely. It doesn't have to be human connections that we've been talking about today.
Yeah. And dogs make great therapists as well. You talk to a dog and they just tilt the head.
They're great listeners.
They're great listeners.
People do tend to pour their heart out to dogs.
And you know where you stand with a dog, 3 emotions: happy, sad or confused. And that's it.
I love the confused with the head.
It's been really lovely to talk to you today. I just want to go around the table, just a final 30 seconds each if we can, of just what advice you would give to people who are feeling lonely. Georgia.
I'd say first of all, seek help if it is really bad. When I was at university, I didn't do that. I didn't know where to turn, and I think there is resources out there if you are looking for help. But also putting yourself out there as well. Go and find where the options are to make friends, and don't be afraid to, like I said, if it is online, don't be afraid to send the first message. Think of something fun to say, or ask them a fun question. Just put yourself out there, and you'll definitely find some friends. And make sure to remember that diversity is really it should be celebrated, and everybody's different, but you'll definitely find friendships there.
Absolutely.
I would say that there's lots of different reasons for loneliness, which is something that we didn't touch on too much. But it doesn't just have to be because you don't have friends. And a lot of people, I did a little poll on LinkedIn and asked people if they felt lonely, and there were a lot of votes on that, and 24% of people said yes, they felt lonely every day, 43% said they felt lonely occasionally, 27% said never, and 7% said yes they did, but they found a way out of it, and 611 people voted. But what was really interesting in the comments was that people gave lots of different reasons for being lonely, and it wasn't always because they were alone. Like you mentioned, you can be in a big group of friends. So I think the main thing I would focus on is connecting with people who you can find something in them that you can align with. So you don't have to look the same, you don't have to sound the same, you don't have to be from the same culture, religion, colour, creed, ethnicity, whatever it is. Find something in them that you really like and celebrate, instead of looking for the bits that aren't there, because it's just going to be a waste of time. And another quick thing I'd really recommend is giving back to other people. And instead of trying to draw people to you, you give back to them. So that's a really good way to fill your time. And also ask yourself, am I lonely or am I bored?
Really good one.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I mean, For me, then, it's important to realise that, I mean, you say so many people feel lonely, so in other words, there is nothing wrong with feeling lonely. There's nothing unusual, there's nothing wrong with you if you feel lonely from time to time. And what you need to do, you know, to kind of like a mindful phrase, is you need to be compassionate to yourself.
Absolutely.
You need to do nice things for yourself. And I think Shannon's advice is so good, I'm going to nick it. The idea where if you volunteer your time for someone like a charity or a special interest group, people will be grateful for you being there. They will be grateful for your time, and you will be able to interact with like-minded people who are pleased you're there. And that is probably a great and easy way in to kind of relatively instant social network. And it's probably one thing I would advise, even if you move across country, to do something like that. It's good.
Great advice. Thank you very much, all.
Thanks.
It's been really nice to talk to you.
It's
Thank
been
you
a
for being
pleasure.
part of
Thank you
LIFICAST.
so much.
Are We More Lonely? Georgia Whedon, Dr. James Jackson, and Shannon Humphrey. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.